Well, welcome to the Faith Roots podcast. Lovely to have you back with us. You'll be aware that we've moved home recently. Those of you that are watching will recognise that there's a change of backdrop from where I've previously recorded things. I'm sat here in our conservatory this afternoon in our new house. And moving house is fascinating because there are all sorts of things that you go through. There's all of the stresses. It's meant to be one of the top three most stressful things that you can go through. Generally speaking, a lot of moving wasn't stressful for us. I think that trying to cut down all of the clutter that we've built up was probably a bit stressful. There's an article coming out on the blog about that later in the week. And also dealing with solicitors and surveyors and local authorities for searches, that kind of thing's a bit stressful, isn't it? But actually, a lot of moving's really joyful and exciting. So we moved from Smethwick to Great Barr. We bought our house, and finally completion date arrived. And then here we are in our new house, and we've been unboxing everything and getting everything set up. And we started to get visitors, which is great. I love having visitors. If you've not been and popped in yet, please do come and see us. But I noticed something really different about what happens when you are in your new house, when you've moved in. You see, if you came to our house in Smethwick, you might have just stopped at the door if you were just picking something up or dropping something off. But perhaps you came to see us, you popped in for a chat, you had a coffee, you might have been for a meal as well. And basically what you would have done is you'd have come in, you'd have sat down somewhere, probably in our lounge for a coffee or for a cold drink, and then at some point would have said, you want to come through to the dining area? It was all practically the same room, wasn't it? And then we would have had dinner together, and then you'd have gone home. You might at some point have needed to use the bathroom. We only had the one, it was upstairs. You would have popped up to there. But when we go and see people who have just moved house, it all changes, doesn't it? So people arrive and we offer them a tour of the house. You find yourself saying, do you want to look around? And I don't know why you do that, but everyone does it when they move house. And do you want to come and have a look around? You start to do a tour of the place. You think that having had people traipsing around your last house, that you'd be sick and tired of that happening. But no, we want to show it off. And we suddenly become like estate agents. It's like, I've learned how to do this. I've learned how to sell houses. Maybe I could sell this one. Not a great idea. You've only just moved in. You've not got anywhere else to go. You start commenting on the features of the place and what stands out about it. And people come round and they comment on things as well. And oh, this is lovely. Oh wow, can I see the upstairs now? Not in normal. You just normally wouldn't do that, would you? You'd be quite happy with the downstairs. I mean, if you did need a toilet, you come and see the upstairs. Then you wouldn't go for a full tour. All you need to know is where the bathroom is. You don't need to see all the different bedrooms in the house. And if you're visiting, you start to measure, oh, this is a good sized room, isn't it? How big is it? Oh. And you start to talk about the decor. Are you going to change it? Well, probably at some point. And all those things you just wouldn't normally do. And then the other thing is, people start congratulating you, don't they? Well done. Congratulations. I didn't build it. I'm not sure that I deserve any credit. Literally all we've done, all that you're congratulating us for is getting a little bit further into debt on the mortgage. Congratulate the Building Society, they're the ones that are funding this project. Congratulate the original builder who built the house. Congratulate the previous owners who have looked after it and developed it well. but I'm not sure what I'm getting congratulated for. But anyway, here we are. We've moved into our new house, and one of the questions that will come up quite frequently from people is, does it feel like home yet? You got used to it. What happens when you're driving home from work, Sarah? Do you, that's to my wife, do you find yourself drawn? Do you have to remind yourself not to turn off and go the old way home? Do you get homesick for the old place? Do you wake up in the morning a bit confused about your surroundings? Or does this now feel like your place? And actually, the answer for us is that it very quickly began to feel like home. It began to feel like this was our place. One of the reasons for that is that we've moved all our furniture in. We bought a house that the downstairs part of it is very like our old house. It's open plan and through into the kitchen, and our furniture fits in more or less like it did in the old house. So in that respect, it feels like home. Another reason why it feels like home to me is because Sarah comes home every night from work, and we have dinner together. So it's our house because we are together here. We've not moved out and left people behind. We left our neighbours behind, but we have come here together. So there's a lot that makes this feel like it is our home. This is our place. So I've started to think a bit about home, and that's what I want to talk about. As I said in last week's podcast, I want to spend a couple of weeks talking about home from a few different perspectives. I want us as individual Christians to think about our home. Where is our true home? Where are we settled? Where do we belong? And I want us to think about what it means for our lives, our hearts, ourselves, to be a home for Christ. But also I want us to think both individually and as churches about what it means for us to make a home for others. Somewhere where people will be welcome, somewhere where they can belong, somewhere where they can find rest, somewhere where they can meet Christ. In a lot of respects, that's our personal mission statement, to make a home. To make a home that is open and loving and welcoming to others, centred on Jesus Christ. And to extend out from there, to help a church and other churches be places, as churches are planted, to be places that are home, that are loving and welcoming, places of rest, places where people can settle and meet Christ and find family. This week we're going to talk about a future home. I'm going to return to a topic and a Bible passage that I often find myself coming back to. John 14, very familiar words. John 14. Verse 1 says, "Don't let your hearts be troubled. Trust in God and trust also in me. There is more than enough room in my Father's home. If this were not so, would I have told you that I am going to prepare a place for you? When everything is ready, I will come and get you, so that you will always be with me where I am, and you know the way to where I am going." So first of all, we want to think about future home. Where is home for us as believers? And we want to answer that by saying that home is not in this present world as it is. Jesus talks about a future home. Now, that's not that this creation itself is wrong. In fact, when you look at the Bible and you look at, it's not that we are going to, when we die or when Jesus comes back, float off to the clouds. When you look at the Bible, the theme sometimes captured by this idea of heaven is as much about new or renewed creation. That what we look forward to when Christ returns is life with him in a creation like this, that there's continuity from the world as we know it now. But the world as it is now is not home. The world that we live in now is not home because it is a world that is fallen. And a world thinking not about the physical creation so much as the values, the worldview, the priorities of society and culture around us. The world that is not home because it's not a place where we find rest and peace. Because this world's values are different to ours. Because the centre of the home is not the centre that it should be. If you live in the United Kingdom or you follow UK politics, that's come over very strongly, hasn't it? When we see our leaders, our politicians, making it clear that they don't value things like faithfulness and loyalty and compassion, where they have no concept of truth, where they don't care about the most vulnerable and the needy. That tells us that we live in a world that isn't our home, where we don't belong, where the Bible uses the imagery of being aliens, strangers, sojourners, temporary dwellers, exiles, because home is somewhere else. And that's the home that Jesus talks about in John 14. The context is that this is Jesus' Last Supper. This is the night that he was going to be betrayed, and he shares the Passover meal with his disciples. And as he shares it with them, he teaches them. That's where he makes it clear to them that he is now going to leave them, that he's going to be betrayed, put on trial, and executed. He's going to be crucified. Jesus keeps teaching them that his death, his crucifixion, will lead to resurrection, but then to ascension, that he is going to return to the Father. And that's what causes distress for his followers. That there are uncertain times ahead, and that this Jesus who they love, this Jesus that they've become dependent on, this Jesus who's made his home, made his dwelling place with them, is about to leave. Distressing because, in fact, right up until this point, all of their arguments, all of their quarrels had been on the assumption that Jesus was going to remain, that he was going to be a political leader who would win a kingdom, overthrow the Romans, set up his kingdom, his regime, and they were constantly quarrelling about who was going to get to have the most important jobs, who was going to be foreign secretary, who was going to be chancellor of the exchequer, who was going to be home secretary, that kind of thing. And now Jesus is saying it's not going to work out like that. I'm not going to overthrow Pilate. I'm not going to lead a rebellion against Caesar. No, my plan is very different. And it involves me leaving through death and resurrection and ascension. And that's the context in which Jesus says, don't let your hearts be troubled. Don't be worried. Trust in God and trust also in me. In fact, that phrase, trust in God, may be a statement that they already do show their trust in God, and because they trust God, they can trust Jesus. They can trust Jesus because he is from God. He's the one who brings God's living word, sent by the Father. But more than that, because Jesus is God himself. Christians believe in the one God in three persons, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. And a bit later on, Jesus will say that if he leaves, then he will send the third person of the Trinity, the Comforter, the Holy Spirit, so that they're not going to be on their own. But the point here is that Jesus is saying, I'm leaving because there is another job ahead. My task now is to prepare a place for you so that you and I can have a home with God. In fact, I want to suggest that the way in which Jesus prepares that home for us is through his death and resurrection, through his defeat of death, through taking the penalty of sin on himself so that we can be forgiven, so that we can be restored and justified and reconciled to God. Because the most important thing about this future home that we look forward to, this new creation, this new home, is this: that we will be with God, that we will be with the Father, that we will be with the Son, with Jesus. That's something to look forward to. Now, the New Testament, quite a bit of it takes time then to tell us about that home that we look forward to. Parts of Revelation, parts of Hebrews, other Bible passages scattered in, point us to that future. And whilst sometimes Christians have acted as though all we care about is kind of getting a ticket to heaven, and we've not focused enough on what happens now in this life, I think particularly the church today can be at risk of going too far to the other extreme. That we talk all about now and the present, and we forget that there is a future ahead. But that future is important, that future grace that we look forward to, that expectation of home, of where we are headed, it shapes our decisions and our priorities now. I've got a better understanding of that over the past few months. You see, over the last 6 months, we've been aware that we would move house. And we'd had a look around, and we'd seen all the pictures, and we'd seen the plan and the layout of the house. And we knew we were coming here. And so for the past 6 months, a lot of our life, a lot of our decisions, a lot of our actions have happened with the move in mind. First of all, it's made us think carefully about financial stewardship, because we've known that there's going to be a financial outlay. We knew that we were going to have to put down our deposit. We were going to have to pay the difference between the sale of our old house and the cost of this new house. There were alterations that we wanted to make. We wanted to turn the garage into a study, an office for me. And so we had to prepare for that, set money aside, save up, priorities, make decisions about our priorities. And over the past 6 months, Sarah's been looking and thinking about the commute to work. What's going to be the best route? And so when we've been getting up in the morning, we were checking on our phones, on Google Maps, how long it would take and the different routes and how the time changed depending on exactly when Sarah set off and similarly coming back from work in the evening so that she could plan and prepare for that. When we've been shopping, we've been looking for things that might go well and might be helpful in the new house. And similarly, we started to go through our belongings. We started to sort and organise and get rid of things that we wouldn't need, things that we were unlikely to use because they wouldn't fit in, wouldn't be useful in the new house. And also we were careful not to buy things that might have been useful at the old house but weren't going to be useful here. Our focus has been on the move and preparing for it, getting to know the lay of the land. So in the lead up, I was again going on Google Maps and I was looking at the street view, and I was walking the streets on the maps, just getting a feel for the area. We were also checking how far is it from mum and dad's, both mum and dad's, how far is it from other relatives and friends, all those kinds of things. So our life was shaped by the fact that we were moving here. And our attitude to our old house was shaped by the knowledge that that house was now temporary, that our time there was coming to an end. Future home should shape our lives as Christians. Knowledge of where we're going to, of what the future holds, of the home ahead, should affect how we live now. Particularly as we get older. Now, I know that I'm increasingly closer to the day when I move to that home. Day by day, a little bit closer. Either because one day we're going to die and we're going to go to be with Jesus, or because Jesus will come back. So I want to ask you, are you, and is your church family, are you living life now with an eye on that future home, on being ready, being prepared? Future home, and how is it affecting life now? And I want to draw our attention to one thing that should shape life now, shape my attitude individually, my family's attitude and my church's attitude, and it's this. Jesus says, this is the reason why we're to trust in him and not to be anxious and worried. Jesus said, there is more than enough room in my Father's home. If this were not so, would I have told you that I am going to prepare a place for you? There is more than enough room. That's the New Living Translation, brilliantly summing up the more literal translations, that in my Father's mansions, in my Father's house are many rooms or many mansions, many houses. The image there of an Eastern palace with courtyard upon courtyard of dwelling place within the walls of a palace, which is more like a city. And that's the thing that I want us to particularly get. The home that we are going to is spacious. It's not cramped. There's no constraint in terms of the place itself that limits who will go in. The only limiting factor is that the route in is through trust in Jesus Christ. That's the constraint. But we see here an expansive vision that God is not restricted, that God is not mean-spirited. That I don't have to worry. I don't have to worry that I might get squeezed out. I don't have to worry that God might have to cull the list of who's going to get in at the last minute. And I don't have to worry that there will be too many people for the resources to cope with. That heaven won't be able to cope with the sheer numbers. And all that means that if we're looking forward to this expansive, welcoming, spacious home, then that's what our churches should be like: expansive, welcoming, spacious. I'm not talking about physical space here. My point is very simply this: that if we know that there is more than enough room in our Father's house, then our arms should be open, our doors should be open, our life should be open to welcome as many as possible. Here is motivation for us to be sharing the good news and giving as many people as possible the opportunity to come home, to be part of the family, and to know Jesus. So, two questions. A general question here. What is it that you know about the home that we're going to that most shapes your life now? Specific to this point here, knowing that the home we're going to is spacious with more than enough room, does that influence how I live my life, how I share my faith with others, and how does it influence the priorities and the activities of our church? I want to encourage you to think about them, about those questions, and to talk about them.